Hello and welcome. Hi, my name's Dave. I recently published a to-do list web app tutorial with accessibility features. And while a lot of it was great, when I inspected the accessibility features with Firefox, it noted a couple of things I could improve upon. So today we're going to work through the app and improve a few more accessibility features. Let's get started. Here is the to-do list web app as we left it. We've got eat, sleep, code, and tacos. We can remove tacos. Everything is working as inspected. I am in Chrome and I've opened DevTools. You can press Control-Shift-I to do that, or you can right-click on the page and choose Inspect. You can see Control-Shift-I highlighted right here. Once you do that, usually I go to the console. It may open up in the Elements tab for you, but you should see these arrows where you can see more tabs. If we go to Lighthouse, we can inspect parts of our page. I unchecked all the categories except accessibility, and I'll run an accessibility report. It doesn't take long, just a quick audit. It does delete all of the list items as it checks. And it's almost done. It says 100% accessibility, and that's great. That's previously what I did for the app, was to check it with Lighthouse. And you can see all of the tests that it passed, and it also says it has 26 tests that are not applicable. However, there are notes here with Lighthouse that says these highlights. Let me pull this over so we can read it all. Highlight opportunities to improve the accessibility of your web app. However, manually check, and it lists a few items you can conduct an accessibility review for. Well, instead of doing that, I'm going to open Firefox, and I have Firefox Developer Edition. So what you want to do is go to Google and just Google Firefox Developer Edition, and you will see the site pop up. Load here in just a second. And you want to download the Developer Edition. It's got some great features, definitely for writing CSS as well. But I checked out the Accessibility Inspector, and to my surprise, even though I passed the Lighthouse check, it identified a couple of things in the app that could be improved upon. So here I have the app open in Firefox, and Control-Shift-I opens the DevTools just like it does in Chrome. And from here, I just drug over the console a little bit. The font is a little smaller. Let me see if I can increase that in the same way. There, that makes it a little easier to read. Still kind of small. And there are different tabs in the inspector in Firefox as well. I'm going to go to accessibility. You can see I have eat, sleep, at least a couple of items on the to-do list here. And you can check for issues. We can go through one by one or check all issues. I'm going to go through one by one at first. And first we'll check contrast. This is the color contrast between the text, the font on the page versus the background color. And you can see we get highlighted for one item here, contrast. And it's identified the plus symbol. Click that and we come down here under checks and it says 2.78. Well, rounded off, that would be a 3-to-1, but it's just not quite there. And Firefox just does a little bit more of a detailed check. It says does not meet the WCAG standards for accessible text, and we can learn more by clicking that link. Because the contrast is 2.78, and if we follow this link, it's going to show that for large text, which that plus symbol was identified as large text, large scale text, here we go, that it really wants a 3-to-1 ratio. We were very close, but not quite. So we'll want to fix that. Let's go ahead and check something else. The keyboard, because we were focusing on navigating with the keyboard. However, we were just navigating with tab, and we used tab index attributes in the HTML elements when we made the app. And this says to-do list, keyboard. We put a tab index on the to-do list, so when we were tabbing through, it would announce that section. However, that's not what we want to do. It says focusable elements should have interactive semantics. So we really only want to put a tab index on something that is interactive, like a button or an input. And this was just a static header element. We really didn't want to add that to the interactive part of the accessibility tree with the tab index. We can navigate through the page in other ways. And let me come back to Chrome for a second because I have another tab open. Here we go. Using tab index, and I'm going to link to this article in this video description where you can read about using tab index. And Rob Dodson is a developer advocate at Google, and he has some great articles and videos on accessibility. And so this article discusses using tab index, and I will link to that. We are going to test again today with the ChromeVox Classic extension for Chrome. And I pulled up the shortcuts reference because before we were just using tab to go through our app, but actually you can arrow through and use some different commands. And if you are a user that's familiar with screen readers, that's probably how you navigate, not just using tabs. So before I was kind of hyper focused on just tabbing through and having the screen reader sound correctly. This time we want to go ahead and take away that tab index from that header, but still structure our page so it uses headers correctly and they can be read. However, when we just use tab to go through the page, it should only hit the interactive elements. Okay, back to our Firefox check. We can also check for text labels. And it checked and we have no problems there. So the two problems identified, the contrast with the plus symbol, and we have a tab index on a element that's really not interactive. So we want to remove that. Fairly easy, but I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of other things I think that will improve the accessibility as well. Okay, we're going to start in the index HTML file for the to-do list web app and just make a few changes. The first thing we'll do is find the tab index that we need to remove from this H1 header, and we'll go ahead and remove that. But I think I'm also going to change this to an H2 header. And that is because this is one of two sections. Now we want to respect the header hierarchy as well. So we will want an H1 somewhere above this. But right now we've changed this to-do list header to an H2, and I'm going to add another H2 in the new item entry section up above our form for the other section on the page where we entered a new to-do list item. And here I'm going to say new item entry, but we will not display this on the page. We will use that same styling we previously used for a label to send it off of the page. However, a screen reader will still read it. So this will not change the appearance of our page, but now we have a heading for each section of the page. And now just inside the main section, I'm going to add another header, and this will be the H1 for the page. And here I'm just going to put to-do list app. And I'm going to do the same thing here, is we'll style this to be sent off of the page. So we'll save those headers, and now we have the correct header hierarchy for the page. So we have an H1, and it is in the parent of the two sections, and each section has an H2 heading, and screen readers will follow this hierarchy, and you can navigate just by header with the screen reader, and that will probably help out. Now, what else do we need to do? We removed the tab index because we didn't want that on an item that was not interactive. However, screen readers can still read those items through navigation, whether it is just jumping from header to header or just using, depends on the screen reader, but just using possibly the arrow keys to navigate through each element that can be read. Now, the other thing that I wanted to change in the HTML will not really change how it works at all, but it's just something, and I'm going to get this code to wrap really quick. In Visual Studio Code, I press Alt-Z. There we go. I guess I had it wrapping already. Buttons and input items or input elements where we had the tab index already added to those manually, they already respond that way inherently without adding the tab index of 0. So we can remove that from the input and from both buttons, and they will still respond in the same way. We only really need to add the tab index 0, say if we took a div and turned it into a custom button or something that didn't inherently already have that behavior. So we can remove those tab indexes from the two buttons and the input, and they will still have that behavior that we desired. So let's save those changes. And now that we've changed our HTML, we can go look at the new item entry. The new item entry, we have added an H2. We used to have an H1, but we added an H2 above the form. And we want to give it that same styling that we did to the label that we sent off screen. So it has an absolute position, and we'll give it a left property of minus 10,000 pixels. Save that, and I just want to make sure we don't need to change anything else. I don't think we do. That should be it for the new item entry partial in our SASS files. After that, we want to go to the base file because we also added a H1 and an H2. Should be right before, yes, right before the section and right after the body. And I'll put main because main is the parent, and then nested is an H1 actually. We'll do this in the base partial, and we'll give it that same style. Position, absolute, and then left, whoops, minus 10,000 pixels. Let me make sure I added the minus when we styled that other one. Yes, I did. Nope, that's the label. Here it is, minus 10,000. And now that we notice, we're kind of not following the do not repeat yourself principle. And I'm not going to go back and change all of that, but you could probably just create one class that has this same style, and then we could apply it to these different elements. And that's probably what I'll do for the future. Okay, now that we've done that, we also have the list container, and it should also, well, we don't need to send that header over. We just changed it to an H2, and nothing else really changes about the header. It's styled with the list title class, and that should be fine. We'll confirm that. Here we are in the list title, and then it's inside the H2. So if we look at that, there was our, what's up here? List title. Yes, it didn't have any specific styling. It was just kind of it's already what it was inheriting, nothing applied directly to it, and that should still work. So I believe we've made most of the changes, but we can't forget to change that color contrast. Right now you can see I had a custom green color, and while that color is cool, we just want to comment this out and go ahead and just use the word green here. And I believe that will give us enough color contrast. Now that we've made our changes, let's go back to Firefox and check these accessibility issues again. Everything should be updated with live server. Just refresh the page. Contrast issues. No contrast issues. That's awesome. Keyboard issues. No keyboard issues. That is awesome too. And we didn't have any text label issues to begin with, so that should be good. We will go back to Chrome, clear out that previous report. I'm going to reload the page, even though it should have already reloaded with live server. I'm just being careful. And click Generate Report, just to make sure we still pass. And once again, the accessibility looks good in Chrome like it did before, but you never know. When you make changes, it always helps to double check. So now we've checked in Chrome and Firefox. So now let's test the app with a screen reader like ChromeVox once again. Okay, to test with ChromeVox, I'm going to close DevTools. And remember, you can get ChromeVox at the Chrome Web Store. It's a free download. search the store for ChromeVox, and then it should pop up right here. I believe I had already searched for that, is why it was there. So the ChromeVox Classic extension. Once you do that, you go to the 3 dots in Chrome, more tools, then extensions, and I've already got that open right here, and then you just enable ChromeVox.
ChromeVox spoken feedback is ready.
And there it is. Now let's look at some of the keyboard.
ChromeVox Classic Keyboard Shortcuts Reference, tab.
Let's look at these keyboard shortcuts. One of the things to note about ChromeVox is their directions here for the keyboard shortcuts continually reference the ChromeVox key. Well, there's not really one key. It just depends which platform you're on. So for Windows, you press Shift plus Alt.
List with 3 items. For the ChromeVox extension for Windows.
I should have activated that afterwards. Let me go ahead and deactivate it temporarily. Okay, and then for Mac, you press Command plus Control. And for example, then, I'll activate it again, and we can look at some of these commands. The close bracket, ChromeVox key, so for me it would be Shift plus Alt plus the close bracket, increases the rate of speech, which I had already done just a little bit. Let me go ahead and activate that again.
ChromeVox spoken feedback is ready.
Now I'll increase the rate of speech.
Rate 33%. Rate 35%.
So around 35%, or I can decrease.
Rate 33%. Rate 31%. Rate 29%. Rate 27%.
It's getting a little slower.
Rate 31%. Rate 33%. Rate 35%.
I think I'll leave it at 35. Now you can notice some basic navigation here. I've got the ChromeVox keys. So again, for me on Windows, Shift and Alt, and then the up key would navigate backwards, or the down key would navigate forward. Now right or left navigates at a more detailed level, and that means you can go from words to letters. If a word needs spelled out, maybe it's not pronouncing the word correctly. Likewise, you could go up to where you were just navigating sections and not getting into the detail of each section. So the ChromeVox keys plus equals navigating to more detail, and the ChromeVox keys plus the minus key is navigation at a less detail. So if you somehow get stuck on letters and you need to back out to have it read words again, you want to remember that the less detail would be ChromeVox keys plus the minus symbol, things like that. Also, jump commands. So we can do ChromeVox keys plus the letter N and then press the letter H, and that will let us jump to the next header. Or if we do ChromeVox keys plus the letter P and then the letter H, it will let us jump to the previous header. That also works with things like, well, this whole list here. So buttons would be the letter B instead of H, and links would be the letter L instead of H, and so on. So you can jump around the page some. That really helps us navigate the app. So
to-do list, tab.
Here we are. I'm going to use the up arrow to navigate backwards.
New item entry. Heading 2. To-do list app. Heading 1.
There's our heading 1. It's styled off the page, but it is available on the page for the screen reader. And then
section. New item entry. Heading 2.
There was our first section, and that was the heading that it read, even though it's off the page. Now I'll navigate with the ChromeVox keys plus the letter N. Now I'll press the letter H.
Section. To-do list. Heading 2.
And I skipped right to the next section, and it read the header for that, which we see on the page. So that's great.
Remove all items from the list.
Now I just did arrow down to get there. And now we don't have any items because our check with the Lighthouse deleted all the items off of our list. So
wrap to top.
The arrow down just takes us back to the top. I'll go backwards.
Section. Remove all items from the list. Heading 2. Section. Add new item to list. Edit text.
Now let's add a few items.
T. Added. S. L. E. P. Sleep added. C. O. D. E. Code added. T. A. C. S. Tacos added.
Now I'll use the tab to navigate.
Add new item to list. Section. Remove all items from the list. Eat, sleep, code, tacos. Checkbox not checked. Tacos edit text.
It still didn't quite get the removed out there. Sometimes it cuts that off.
Add new item to list.
I do know
Section.
we've labeled it
Eat.
correctly.
Sleep. Sleep. Edit text. Add section. Eat. Eat removed. Edit text.
We had eat removed, but it barely got it out. Okay, we need to fix something in our app so the screen reader can actually get out the statement when it's trying to remove an item, because sometimes the item itself, or sometimes the word removed or the phrase removed from list gets cut off because we switch the focus right back to the input. And that, of course, helps us with rapid entry of items, but when we're removing items, it doesn't help so much because the screen reader gets cut off. So there's a couple of things we can do. One is in our click listener for the checkbox, when we're removing each item, we do have this timeout already, so it would let us at least see the check mark in the box, get 1 second of satisfaction here, and there is our 1 second setting. We're going to increase that just a little bit. Let's go 1.5 seconds. Too long would seem like the app was sluggish, but 1.5 seconds may be okay. So after changing that, the other thing we want to do is look at this update screen reader confirmation function, which we have at the bottom. And we want to check for something. We'll just check the length of the new entry text, because if it's a very long phrase, it won't be able to get it out. So let's change something. Let's go. We're going to define a variable named item, and we'll have it equal to a ternary statement. And that ternary statement is going to be the new entry text length. If it is, let's say, greater than 15, then we'll set that variable item equal to the word item. But if it's 15 or fewer characters, we'll go ahead and set it to the new entry text, which will be the specific item that we're sending to the function. And then we just need to change our template literal string to hold that item variable. So therefore, if it says nachos, then it'll say nachos were removed from the list. However, if it says go to the grocery store and get some bread, it should just say item removed from list. So it can get the phrase out and still get the focus back to the input within that 1.5 seconds. Let's test that out. I'm going to turn on ChromeVox.
ChromeVox to-do list tab. A C O S nachos added. Add new section. Eat removed from list. Edit text. Add new section. Sleep removed from list. Edit text.
It's getting the phrase out each time. Now let's make a long phrase. Go to the store
R space
and get some bread.
B D item added. Add new section. Code. Nachos. Go to the store and get some bread. Item removed from list. Edit text.
And that works. So we have shortened the phrase if it's a long phrase. And if it's a short phrase, we've given just enough time for that short phrase to be read
section.
before the focus changes.
Checkbox not checked.
That would change the statement. So
checked. Code. Edit text. Add new section.
Well,
nachos removed from list.
There we
Edit
go.
text.
Sometimes ChromeVox doesn't always do what we want it to, but most of the time it will read exactly what we're thinking.
Eat added.
Or what it's seen. Whoa, if I can spell.
Sleep added. C.
Eat, sleep, and code.
Code added. Add new section. Eat removed from list. Edit text. Section. Sleep removed from list. Edit text.
And it's working like we want it to. Let's go ahead and make our code a little more dry. And remember that acronym means do not repeat yourself, by taking that same style that we applied to several off-screen elements and making it a class of its own that we only have to type in once in our code, and then it will change all items if we need to. So I'm going to search the SASS file or folder, and we'll search not for a new file, we want find in folder. and we're going to search for minus 10,000. So there we see all of the different places we have it. We have it in 3 different files. I'll just go to the base file first, and we have this position absolute left minus 10,000. So I'll copy that, and then we will go to our shared classes partial, and I'm just going to make a class called offScreen. And we'll save that class, and now we can apply that class everywhere we needed it. If I come back to the find, our result should still be there. So the first one was the H1 in the HTML just under the main element. The next one is in the list container in the confirmation that is hidden off the screen. And then the following, an H2 and a label inside the new item entry. So we need to come back into our HTML, and we'll find each one of these and apply the new class. The to-do list is there, that's not hidden, but here we go. We'll call this offScreen. Now we just need to copy this and apply it to the H1 as well, and then the label, and then the confirmation, and it already has a class, so we need to add a second class. We've applied all of those. Now we can delete these other instances in the code. So we no longer need that. And we should no longer need that, which was the same. So we can go back into the HTML now and possibly remove confirmation unless we're selecting that class in the JavaScript, which we might be. So I'm not quite ready to remove that class from that element yet. We might have to double check that. And then the new item entry, so the H2, that can be removed. And the label. And it sounds like I forgot to turn off ChromeVox.
Window to-do list tab. Extension.
Which was getting a little noisy in the background. Okay, so we've removed all of those. We should check our JavaScript to see if we're referencing that confirmation class in here before we would try to clean up that HTML. And we are referencing an ID confirmation, and we have the word confirmation in a function, but it looks like that's it. We're referencing an ID, but not the class in the JavaScript. So we can go back into our HTML and say, yes, we have an ID of confirmation and also a class. We can get rid of this confirmation class because we were only using it to apply CSS to begin with. And those are the changes that made our SASS just a little drier, where we only needed to put this in the code one time and then apply it as a class to several different elements. Well, that about wraps up our deeper dive into making our to-do list web app accessible. There are a few things to remember before we go. One is to test your web app with Firefox Accessibility Inspector and also with Chrome Lighthouse. One may uncover something the other doesn't. And if they give any recommendations that you need to follow manually, go ahead and check those too. We could always dive in deeper. And then test your web app as you would expect a user to use it with only a keyboard. And remember that just using the tab key isn't the only way to navigate through a website using a keyboard. And then test your website as you would expect a user to with a screen reader. Learn a little bit more about the screen reader and how it navigates, and go back to your HTML and make sure the hierarchy of HTML elements, like the headings, exist for each section. Even if you don't want to show them on the page, you want to allow the users to navigate through that hierarchy that a screen reader identifies. Any effort at making your web app more accessible is a good effort. Hi, I'm Dave, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Remember to keep striving for daily progress instead of perfection. Subscribe to my channel and ring the bell to be alerted when I post new tutorials. I'll see you next time.